Claire is better than Leon, at least when it comes to their A scenarios in the 1998 classic Resident Evil 2, and we're here to talk about why. Welcome back everyone to the second part of my Resident Evil 2 classic retrospective, where I go through nearly every moment in each character's playthrough and talk about it. But before we get started, I have a few points to make regarding my last video, which you should definitely watch before this one as I reference it a ton here. First, I referred to Claire as Chris's brother when I meant to say sister, as pointed out by a friend, but I find that kinda hilarious, so I ain't even mad. I'm sure you all knew what I meant, but I need to clarify anyways. Second, when I started up this version of the game, a GameCube ROM through RetroArch on my Xbox One, it presented me with Leon's A scenario first. Since publishing that video, I've learned that the actual canon is Claire A to Leon B, so I'm annoyed that I played out of canon order, but that's more of a personal gripe than a knock against the game. Just understand that it certainly influences how my perception of the game is compared to someone who might have played opposite to me, and I think it's cool that the game can offer such different experiences based on the order you play it in. I'm just mad that I played it out of proper order. But what's exciting to me regardless is that, come Resident Evil 3, I can find out which parts of each scenario carried over into the sequel and which did not, and that's a really neat thing to look forward to. Also, in my previous video, I incorrectly stated that everyone in the city was infected with the G virus, when in reality they were infected with the T virus. The only person infected with the G virus is Birkin, as he created it, but then he died before it could get anywhere. Also, this video spoils some of The Last of Us, so if you still haven't played that game yet, you might want to do so before watching it. All of that said, let's get into Claire's A scenario. Riding a motorcycle, Claire's intro is immediately more badass than Leon's, who was just strolling through town in his police car. Though her badassery is cut short upon what seems to be her first ever zombie sighting in a nearby bar.
Hello. Look, I'm sorry I bothered you, okay? Just don't come any closer.
Sprinting for an exit, we burst through the door to find Boy Wonder himself pointing a gun at us, tying into Leon's cutscene from my first playthrough. As we know, he isn't aiming at Claire, but instead a different zombie, and they get in his car together to go deeper into town. However, the two don't get to talk long as we get surprised by the Leon lookalike zombie in the back of his car, separating our hero's destinies once more. Interestingly, despite Leon in the driver's seat and Claire in the passenger seat, just like how Leon's A scenario was, Claire ends up on the same side of town as he did, which doesn't make any sense. After all, the car crashes and Leon still gets out on the driver's side and Claire on the passenger side. But maybe they didn't have time to craft two separate intro areas, or maybe this changes in their B scenarios. Either way, being on this same side means entering the gun shop once again, but instead of having a macho bro talk like with Leon, the shop owner hits on Claire, calling her
babe, darling,
and
girly,
creepily claiming that he'll protect us, but we all know what's going to happen. I definitely could have done without the comments, but he gets what's coming to him as the zombies bust through the glass. Otherwise, Claire's approach to the police station was much less eventful than Leon's, as I know to avoid zombies and not waste ammo this time around. Her interaction with the dying cop wasn't much different either, though we do learn that the last contact with Chris, her brother, was 10 days ago, which is new information. Gotta love how they chose to record creepy new dialogue for the shopkeeper, but only one new line for the cop who could have revealed some interesting plot details or something of the sort. Though, I do think it's funny that in both scenarios, the cop mentions saving the other survivors in the station, making it seem like there are a whole bunch of people in the surrounding rooms, but there really aren't. There's just a whole bunch of zombies. I open the doors with the card key he gives me, find that note with the safe code, and use Claire's lockpick to open a desk and find a first aid spray. That's right, Claire gets a lockpick instead of a lighter, just as Jill did in the previous game, which is something I find much more useful. Funny that I started with Jill first in game 1 and Chris second, but did the opposite in this game. Part of that is because Resident Evil 2 presented Leon's A campaign to me first, so I figured that was the proper order, but as mentioned earlier, this isn't the case. This liquor gets some good damage on me, but I gun it down before it lands a final hit, and Claire and I move on to find that note detailing Chief Iron's suspicious-ass choice to move all the ammo caches days before the zombie apocalypse breaks out. This same room features that painting above the fireplace that Leon can burn with his lighter, marking the first disadvantage to Claire's lockpick. That said, I know I'll find one later, as I need to burn this picture to find that gem to place in good old General Tyrannos the Brave. I take some damage on my way to the safe room under the stairs, but get myself into a corner and blow down all the zombies with my surplus of pistol ammo. The safe room remains relatively unchanged from my visit with Leon. Upstairs, I solved that puzzle with the statues right away, acquiring Tyrannos' other gem much earlier than I did last time. My problem last time, of course, was due to my lack of puzzle-solving skills rather than a limitation placed by the devs. Since I've already played through this campaign once, I'm much more in the Resident Evil mindset that I need to be if I want to be any sort of successful while playing. The next set of areas, however, marked the first significant change from Claire's A scenario to Leon's. It begins when I enter the STARS office. Inside a locker I find a grenade launcher, which Leon certainly didn't have access to, and that I assume will make Claire's time in the station much more bearable. The next change is after reading Chris's journal and grabbing the unicorn medal. Leon and Claire do not meet up here like in his campaign. Instead, before leaving, the fax machine lights up and in comes a document detailing an investigation undertaken by the Section Chief of Internal Investigations at the U.S. Federal Police Department, Jack Hamilton. Chris himself requested the investigation, and while it didn't turn up much regarding the G virus, it did reveal some suspect activity by none other than Chief Irons. The document notes that Irons has allegedly received a large sum of funds in bribes from Umbrella Inc. over the last 5 years, and that he played a part in covering up both the Mansion case and other Umbrella-involved cases as well. Not only this, but Irons was arrested more than once during his time at university under suspicion of sexual assault. Unfortunately, after spending some time under psychiatric evaluation, he was released shortly afterward due to circumstantial evidence, meaning evidence that infers his innocence rather than proving it, as well as his high academic standing. Strange that this wouldn't have shown up on a background check when becoming the chief of a police station. These findings regarding all the money that the chief has fall in line with the secretary's experiences, in which they wondered how Irons had so much money to spend on weird art. Hamilton recommends extreme caution when dealing with the chief as a result of this investigation, and I agree. This early on, and we're already learning much more about Chief Irons than at this point in Leon's campaign. I head back to the main lobby and get grabbed by a seriously scary amount of zombies through the window along the way. I don't remember this many arms grabbing me in Leon's scenario. From here, I nab the spade key after inputting the unicorn medal in its proper place and make my way to the east side of the station, fight off a ton of zombies in a lobby area, fight off even more in the office space, and open that safe to find some acid rounds from my grenade launcher, a contrast to the shotgun shells from Leon's playthrough. Big fan. There's also a green herb hidden behind the desk here, a nice way for Capcom to reward more thorough players. Claire and I move down the hallway outside of the office space only to enter an even scarier hallway with dimmed down lights and the eerie footsteps of tons of zombies. I realize I wasted my time going this way, only after entering the interrogation room and finding nothing but handgun ammo, but at least I cleared out the evil dead clogging up the hallway to make things easier on myself later. I make my way to the first spade key door and enter the file storage area with that note about the suspicious dude noticed in the sewers with the C4 and stuff, and have Claire push the stepladder toward that file cabinet to grab the crank, only to realize that my inventory is full from mindlessly grabbing an ink ribbon earlier in this room. This is the first time my inventory management skills have failed me this playthrough. Instead of returning to the safe room to swap out items, I use a green herb despite my health being mostly full and move on with my life. I figured this would be a safe option since there are so many herbs I haven't grabbed yet, such as those in the outer stairwell leading to the second floor, and I need this crank. Speaking of the second floor, I head up there past the statue room only to find a little girl being chased by a cop zombie, the girl who I assume is the one Claire was with at the end of Leon's scenario. I clear the zombie and run toward the direction the girl went, only to find it locked, so I don't know how she made it through there, but whatever. This marks the final spade key door, so we toss that aside and run into not the girl, but Sir Leon for the first time since our destinies were separated. Asking about the girl, Leon simply responds,
"Yeah, you just missed her."
As if it isn't at all alarming that a little girl is running through the station by herself. That's not very heroic of you, Leon. He hands us our radio here instead of in the SARS office like in my previous playthrough, and we head off to find the girl. It's at this point I realize what is obvious in retrospect, that Leon's A scenario must connect to Claire's B scenario and vice versa, so I'm not going to see any of the effects from my first playthrough until I play through her second campaign. I hadn't thought much about the scenario connections until now. I assumed that whichever campaign I played first would have an effect on the one I played second, evolving from the vision of the first game where there weren't multiple scenarios for each character, simply one for each. Here, I just thought that the B scenarios were bonus content, but that's clearly not the case. Before leaving, I unlocked the nearby desk to find some flame rounds, and we enter the library to solve that bookshelf organization puzzle, which is exactly the same as in Leon's scenario, so we'll skip over the details this time. The reward, however, is a serpent stone, which is an item not available for Leon, so it'll be interesting to see what puzzle this item solves. I'm so thrown off thinking about the serpent stone that I'm unprepared for a liquor attack on the balcony next door. The liquor knocks me down to low health, and I don't have any heals, but I at least make it to that attic area to utilize the crank. We lower the stairs and come across the missing gear from last time, so it's off to find that in the press room with the flaming tanks puzzle. But first, we gotta lower the ladder to the first floor lobby area and clear out any zombies as well. Entering the secretary office on the second floor, I find a lighter alongside the journal that details all of Iron's weird habits. Definitely a weird spot for a lighter, but now it's possible to acquire Tyrannos' second gem. That's a task for later though, so I swap the lighter for some heals knowing there's another item box near the creepy painting I need to burn in the first place, so I can recover it when I'm in the area. Through this next door is a crazy visual storytelling moment only possible in games, and I absolutely love it. Since Claire is at low health during this moment, she's holding her side, and we enter the room and see a zombie walking towards us. Due to Claire's injuries and her model automatically looking at the enemy as it gets close, we see a girl who looks absolutely exhausted after all she's been through, but also one who understands that there's a long way to go, and that it's time to push past that exhaustion as she pulls up her gun and prepares to fire away. It's an emergent moment that's possible even in an old game like this, thanks to a combination of me failing to heal before walking into the hallway and the cinematic camera angle presented by Capcom. As you may know, Resident Evil had fixed camera angles to get around technical limitations of the hardware at the time. Because of a fixed camera angle, Capcom was able to use pre-rendered 2D backgrounds for their 3D models, like the zombies and the characters, to exist against. This method ensured that director Hideki Kamiya, yes, that Kamiya, and his team could create backgrounds and environments with incredible detail. As pointed out on a gaming blog I think is called Hunstrasse, Capcom even broke this illusion whenever the player dies, fading out the 2D entities and zooming in on the 3D ones, like your player character and any surrounding bodies, during the game over screen. Neat stuff. Moments like these reveal what masterful game designers the ones at Capcom were at this time. This moment continues even afterward once the zombie is floored, with Claire just staring down at it. You can imagine how tired she must feel, but we hear other zombies on the way, so there's no time for breaks. The next zombie is on fire due to the crashed helicopter I know is around the corner and is downed in a single bullet. Knowing I can't get past the helicopter until I put the fire out, I turn around to enter the next hallway and fight off the awfully annoying crows while making sure to grab those heals on the outside stairwell. I gun down some of the crows, but once some more swarm in, I make a run for it and enter the pump area. In here I find the valve handle and something called a bow gun, which seems particularly neat. It's time to try out some of these unique weapons, so I let the zombies from that doorway in. I blow one's leg off with the grenade launcher and take down the other with the bow gun, realizing it fires 3 bolts in a spread, which seems very useful for the crows. I attempt to move over the bodies and save at the typewriter, only to be grabbed by the legless zombie I blew up with a grenade launcher because he's somehow still alive. What the hell is that, man? Claire wastes no time kicking its head off, ensuring the legless zombie also becomes a headless zombie. As I make my way back to the pump with the valve handle, I realize how much faster I'm moving through the game since I know many of these areas and feel confident moving through enemies without necessarily killing them all. A good feeling indeed. I test out the bowgun's capabilities on the crows, and while it's a little less effective than I had hoped, it's still pretty useful overall. Anyways, I get back to the now extinguished helicopter, and as I walk by, I hear a girl scream from the other side of the wall. I'm assuming it's that little girl from earlier. I interact with the smashed door to find out that it's possible to take out the wall, but that there's no way of getting through otherwise. Looking at the map, it does show an area on the other side of this crash, and as far as I know, this space wasn't accessible in Leon's scenario. I try the grenade launcher since that's an item unique to Claire, but it doesn't work, so apparently I need to find a dedicated item for this. I wonder if this is a timed event similar to the dude in Resident Evil 1 who was poisoned, and I have like a minute to rush back with the antidote. Also, knowing all of the marketing material for Resident Evil 2 Remake, part of me thought I might also meet Mr. X and have to lead him here and have him smash through the wall. but as I learn later, that isn't the case. In the meantime, we're already near Tyrannos, so I input one of the gems and grab the diamond precinct key before heading all the way back to a locked door by the safe room under the stairs. The one with the alternative way of getting to that cop from the beginning. In here, I use both the grenade launcher to clear a horde of zombies and use my pistol to take out any stragglers, though aren't all zombies stragglers when you think about it. In here, I find some film and additional bolt gun ammo, though I don't take the latter as I'm more than happy with my weapons for now. What I do take is a plastic bomb found in one of the locked drawers thanks to Claire's lockpick. And if it wasn't apparent that this is what I needed to blow the wall, Claire makes a point of it while also revealing I still need a detonator. I use the film to develop a picture of that experiment like I did with Leon, clearing up an inventory slot while I'm at it. That said, I'm keeping both the bomb and the serpent slate in my inventory for now, as I'm sure both of their use cases will spring up on me and I don't want to show up unprepared. I can make do with my other items until those slots are open again. And look at that, we find the detonator in the very next room where our cop friend turned zombie is, and grab that celebration memo to Leon on our way out for good measure. Claire and I blow up the wall to enter yet another eerie hallway. With the next door leading us to a sitting area with all sorts of drinks, pictures, and taxidermy surrounding it. The camera cuts to the other side and there's a dead body. And how's that for a shock? This definitely isn't the little girl from earlier, but someone entirely new. I examine her body when suddenly, on musical cue, a very police chief looking man swings around in his chair and points a gun at Claire. A moment later, he apologizes for the scare, having assumed I was another zombie, which, as sus as this situation seems to be, is actually fair, so I can't blame him too much.
Are you Chief Irons?
Asks Claire. Yes, he says, before asking who we are, only to immediately rescind that ask before we can answer, writing Claire off, assuming she'll just die like all the others. Irons continues, stating that the girl in his desk was the mayor's daughter and that he was tasked to protect her, a mission he
failed miserably.
Then, in an almost menacing tone, he mentions how beautiful she was.
Her skin nothing short of perfection.
I am really not comfortable hearing a dude who's obsessed with taxidermy mention how perfect the skin of a dead young woman is. This leads me to wonder if he just killed her and that was the scream we heard, and I'm starting to realize that this was not a time scenario but supposed to happen. He then notes that she'll putrefy into a zombie unless we shoot her in the head or behead that head, before commenting,
And to think that taxidermy used to be my hobby. But no longer.
As if he's remiss that he can't stuff her. I am done. This man needs to stop. Irons asks to be left alone and we gladly oblige, heading through a door on the other side of his office. We enter another hallway with a stuffed tiger in it, only to find what I assume to be Irons' room full of art he can suspiciously afford. But upon entering, we hear footsteps, and with all of this destructible stuff around, could this be Mr. X? Yes, these footsteps are pretty light and probably not very fitting for a giant monster, but please don't be Mr. X. This is not the type of room I want to find him in. I equip my grenade launcher in the face of such potential danger and turn the corner into a dark room, flip the light switch, only to find a document. Secretary's Diary B, no less. You might remember Secretary's Diary A mention all the weird things Irons does, like spend a lot of money on bad art, or get mad that stone statues were moved. And while Diary B starts similarly, it quickly turns into something much more sinister. At first, it describes the chief's crazy anger once again, but the next entry reads that the secretary has found out what the chief has been hiding all along, and that if the chief finds out he knows, his life will be in serious danger. Unfortunately, it ends there, so we don't get to know what it is yet. If this is the type of information he's storing back here, I'm very surprised the chief just let us walk past him into his private areas. The camera cuts, and it's the little girl from earlier. She screams, but Claire grabs her before she can run away, reassuring the girl that she's safe here and there's no need to fear. This works, and she hugs Claire while an uplifting theme plays to highlight the moment. We radio Leon to give him an update, another occurrence I assume will appear in his B scenario, and we learn the girl's name is Sherry, and that her parents work at the Umbrella chemical plant near the city's limits. As for why Sherry is here and not with them, her mom had called when the outbreak started and told her to run to the police station for safety. That was obviously the wrong call. Sherry says that she's terrified of something out there, and we hear a big roar.
What was that?
Could this be Mr. X? But before we can stop her, she runs off and we chase after, and at this point I assume we'll see Mr. Irons holding her hostage or being otherwise creepy, but instead the desk is empty, and we find the Heart Precinct key alongside his diary. The diary confirms that Irons has been working with Umbrella, as the man complains that they haven't kept their promises and ended up ruining his town. He then goes into how he successfully spread confusion among the police and made it so no one from quote-unquote the outside will come to help, whatever that means. He's also made it so all precinct exits are blocked off so no one can escape the station or the city alive. Even worse, Irons was aware of some survivors in the precinct. He was originally going to leave them to their own devices, but instead chose to hunt them down himself. Our chief details killing one of his own before mentioning that he let the mayor's daughter escape so he can enjoy hunting her down later, an outcome we already witnessed. And yep, he was going to pose her body like the freak he is. Well, if there was any confusion regarding the chief's involvement in this, it's certainly been cleared up now. Behind his desk is a painting covering up 3 holes where the Serpent Stone and 2 others go, with some scripture detailing that the gateway to doom will open upon restoring said stones. Very curious indeed. I'm certainly getting a lot of context for the findings made in Leon's scenario, which I appreciate, and I'm enjoying the game much more on the second playthrough as a result. That said, my main concern for now is to find Sherry and the other stones, and probably the chief as well. I head out to utilize this heart key, which is useless after unlocking 1 door, and surprise those dogs that try to sandwich me with some flaming grenades to the face. Hell yeah. I step out to that sewer entrance and try shooting the dogs up above ahead of time too, but it doesn't work. Can't get the drop on everyone, I guess. I stock up at that eerie-ass safe room with the unsettling overhead view, step outside, and find Sherry once again. She's conveniently standing near that hole that's too small for adults to enter, and says she hears her dad calling for her through it, which I 100% do not believe. It doesn't matter what I think though, and Sherry jumps on through only for me to gain control of her. Interesting. It's definitely an alternative to playing as Ada, considering Sherry doesn't even get a gun, but she does have a photo of her family and a first aid spray. My new companion and I step onto an elevator and wait a second after hearing some footsteps. Only to see an infected dog creep around the corner, which scares me so much I need to go back down for a second. We try again and the same situation occurs, but this time I try to sprint by. Sherry is nowhere near as fast as these dogs, but since I'm playing on easy, she takes 5 hits and is still in good condition, so take that as you will. I can't really imagine how someone playing on a harder difficulty would be able to get by here. No matter how fast you run, the dogs just immediately catch up. Funnily enough though, I end up in that spot where Ada became a playable character in Leon's scenario and find some grenade launcher rounds, which are perfect for a little girl to be carrying around. But let's talk for a second about mid-game character swaps. These mid-game character swaps are a great innovation on the original game's design, where you might play as Rebecca if Chris ever got poisoned. Proper implementation provides new storytelling avenues, taking advantage of the medium by allowing us to actually play as that other character, rather than having them tell us of their experiences in a cutscene or something. Plus, other characters mean different loadouts, forcing the player to adapt to a new playstyle and leave their comfort zone or die trying. This stuff is cool. I love when games do this, but only if they implement it properly. The Last of Us is a perfect example of this, having you swap to Ellie in the winter chapter while Joel is recovering from an injury. Ellie is weaker than Joel with a different loadout, forcing the player to deal with these limitations by playing stealthier to avoid potential damage. The player's reward for getting through this section is grim. Having Ellie commit her most brutal kill yet cements in her a dark understanding of what's necessary to survive in that world, making for an impactful storytelling moment. Much more so than if Joel was just knocked out for the winter and Ellie committed these acts and then told us afterward how traumatic they all were, rather than experiencing it with her ourselves. While nothing that drastic happens while playing as Sherry, Resident Evil 2 certainly helped build the foundation for the mid-game character swap. Sherry and I end up in the puzzle room with the floating boxes, and I solve the puzzle right away thanks to my previous experience, actually remembering that I can step on top of some surfaces this time. On the other side, we get the final precinct key, the club key, and I head back to Claire to give her the good news. Well, good news for us, as we got some new items, but bad news for Sherry, as her dad is nowhere to be found. The two share a brief moment, and Sherry runs off by herself again against Claire's wishes. A brave little girl in all honesty. I definitely wouldn't want to be alone as a child during all this, or even as an adult. Claire and I head back and grab the red keycard from the autopsy room, sprinting back out this time as I ain't waiting around for the zombies to crawl out of these slots. From here we solve the power supply puzzle, enter the arms storage, and this time end up leaving the the submachine gun for Leon while taking the side pack. He could use the gun, as Claire is more than fine with the grenade launcher. This is yet another moment where I realize Leon's B will connect to Claire's A, as I obviously already went through this part with Leon, and my decision there didn't carry over here. The parking garage is hilariously useless this time around, with no Ada to be found, which means I'm finding a new way into those sewers. I find some acid rounds near the watchman and his diary, and use a precinct key to enter the other side of the interrogation room, which contains an eagle stone. Only one more stone to go. I bail as the liquor attacks, again using my previous experience to stay alive. We grab a lighter to clear the furnace puzzle in the press room and acquire the gear in Tyrannos' other gem. But along the way, I realize that this door here next to the stone statues doesn't appear on the map, which is pretty sus. Since it didn't play a part in Leon's A scenario or Claire's A scenario, I assume it'll apply in our B playthroughs. The gear opens that metal door Leon used to jump into the bottom floor near the journalist, but this time there's not a hole there. Instead, we're provided half of the final stone, the Jaguar stone. I don't have much time to wonder where the other half is though, as we find it in Tyrannos once I drop off his second gem. Returning to Iron's office to input the stones, we find Sherry once again. I hate the thought of her believing the creepy chief's office is safe, but I don't blame her for returning here. The stones open a secret entrance that contains a letter addressed to the chief from Birkin. It's that dirt that the journalist in Leon's scenario dug up, about the mansion and having the chief dispose of any STARS members in an accidental method if they have evidence of what happened. We also find an elevator and ride it down to see Irons getting attacked and infected by Birkin himself, the equivalent scene to the journalist getting infected in Leon's campaign, I assume. This is the first time we're actually seeing Birkin in Claire's campaign, though we don't get a good glimpse of him. And it's funny how in both scenarios we find this letter right before Birkin infects someone. Claire only overheard what happened, so we rush down a hallway to find a door with torches around it. Remember the door in Iron's office read that the gateway to doom will open upon finding the 3 stones? It's clear right away that something about this door is different. So, upon interacting with pretty much every single door in all of Resident Evil 2, there's a quick fade to black away from the game, the door opening, and a fade to black back to the game and we're back in control. The door to doom is different. The screen remains black for far longer after the door animation, and we even hear it close with the screen still blacked out. Before any vision is returned, we hear Irons laugh in what I'm pretty sure is the only moment in either scenario so far where the game plays character audio with a black screen, which is super unsettling as you're certainly used to the rhythm and cadence of opening doors by now. A few extra seconds of dark will make you feel uncomfortable even if you don't realize why.
So you've made it this far. Not bad, girl. But I'm not letting anyone leave my town. Everyone's gonna die!
Calm down, Chief.
Claire asks what happened, and the chief holds her at gunpoint while complaining that Umbrella's G-Virus has ruined his beautiful town before revealing something pretty monumental.
Dr. William Birkin is the genius behind the project.
William Birkin?
I'm sure you've already seen his little girl running around here somewhere. Sherry, isn't it? In case you haven't already figured it out, the monster that's been tearing my precinct apart is yet another product of the G-Virus, an ultimate bioweapon. Umbrella must be trying to cover its tracks. But if I have to go, I'm going to take you with me.
Thing is, I don't think Irons realizes that monster was Birkin. He just refers to the beast as another product of the G-Virus, the ultimate bioweapon. He seems to think that this beast was a random test subject and that Umbrella let it go to kill everything in the station and cover up their tracks. But as we know from Leon's scenario, that isn't exactly what happened. Either way, Irons believes Umbrella is trying to kill him and claims that if he has to go, then we do too. But before he can fire, his chest explodes into pain just like Ben's did, and a creature breaks out while the chief's body collapses into the ground. A deserving end for our chief, but I still don't understand why Birkin is just infecting people only to have them die moments later. Why not just crush them with your massive strength? With the chief said and done, Claire explores the room to find some acid rounds, and surprisingly nothing else of import besides the ladder to an underground cave. Here we see an eyeball arm mutate into that monster that Leon fights near the chest piece door in his scenario. Though with Claire, I quickly get rid of it thanks to the grenade launcher and all of its ammo. From here, I navigate to a blast door, but I can't go through because I don't have Sherry. Oh my god, Sherry. I left her back in Iron's office. I make the trek back to grab her, and Claire chooses not to tell Sherry her dad created the G-Virus. Probably a good idea for now. She then radios in Leon to say that we're going into the sewers and completely ignores his pleas to talk more, which is based as all hell.
Leon, are you still there? We're leaving.
Are you crazy? The streets are still crawling with zombies.
It'll be all right, trust me. We found a way to the sewer. Follow us later.
Claire! Claire! Wait!
Speaking of Leon, his entrance to the sewers was through the jail area where Ben was. It's interesting that Claire's is in a very different circumstance. The two girls make their way to the blast door when Mr. Birkin appears up above us looking quite imposing, and he is not someone I want to mess with right now, so we run through the doors before he notices. Having safely got away from Birkin, a vent opens and the current pulls Sherry down deeper into the sewers all Pennywise style, making the total time Claire has actually protected Sherry a total of 2 minutes. We take control of her again and find ourselves in a storage room of some sort. The single zombie here is way easier to avoid than the dogs from before, and we escape through another vent that leads to another hideous cockroach pipe. This was bad with Ada, but seeing a kid get swarmed with bugs feels so much worse. They even start flying at and stunning her, which doesn't happen with Ada, making my body shudder and my skin crawl. Unfortunately for Sherry, things are not getting any better yet. The next vent puts her out in a trash chute where she finds the wolf medal for opening the sewer door to the lab, but the chute then opens and drops her into that room with the massive gator. This also violently knocks her out, and just as things seem the most dire, it's actually Birkin that appears and not the gator before the screen fades to black. Is it possible for Sherry to die if I'm not careful? Is Birkin really going to kill his own daughter? I know he's not exactly in control of himself, but still. Back as Claire, we find a safe room and the sewer manager facts about important people coming into the sewers on certain days throughout the month and to be ready for them. Here there's a door to the storage area that Sherry was in, but this area isn't important for Claire. Instead, I take a lift down to the three-way tunnel where Annette shoots Leon when he's with Ada. On the topic of Ada, I really hope to learn more about her soon because she's sus as all hell. Claiming to have a boyfriend, but flirting with Leon and telling him she wants to spend her life with him? Like, what is going on? Why do we not get more context for this? The spider sewers are as freaky as ever. I find the bodies that the Birkin monster took out, and Annette comes out of nowhere with a gun to my face. She claims Claire is
another spy sent by Umbrella, right?
And that we're here to steal her husband's G-Virus. This mention of a husband tips Claire off that this is Annette, as I don't think she knows that she exists yet, and she rightfully shames Annette for not being aware of her kid running around in this hell on earth by herself.
I told her to go to the police station. What's she doing here?
Annette exclaims before noting that her husband is in fact the big monster, which is news for Claire, and that he'll get Sherry. Unfortunately, she doesn't know he already has gotten her. Annette then explains everything that went down to Claire, cutting to that cutscene of William Birkin being pure evil while producing his G-Virus and then getting shot by Umbrella only to inject himself with said virus to save his own life.
So those rats were the carriers of the virus?
Claire points out that the rats then transmitted the T-Virus, which I don't think Leon noted, so if someone plays Leon A first like I did, and they happen to miss the brief look at the rats during that previous cutscene, they might not have known that the rats are the reason the T-Virus spread so quickly. Annette has really let her guard down with Claire compared to Leon and Ada. She's really just spilling the beans. It's probably because Claire was taking care of her freaking child, and I think that gave her some points in Annette's book. She then confirms what we've already seen, that G-Virus bioweapons such as William can inject others with their embryo and spread it around even more. Or that's the intent, at least.
That's why he's after Sherry,
Annette explains, revealing that while William can infect anyone he wants, most bodies reject the virus and then explode, as they don't have similar genetic coding as the host, which we saw with Ben and Chief Irons. Sherry, however, has very similar genetics to William, considering she is his daughter, hence his innate desire to capture her.
It's an inherent survival instinct.
Annette puts bluntly, as only a scientist could when talking about their daughter turning into a giant monster. Speaking of Sherry, we hear her screech from afar and send Annette off to the safe room. Unfortunately, we're not far behind, as I forgot the valve handle necessary to raise the catwalk and make progress, so I make a point to clear out some of the spiders on my way back. Hopefully Annette got through them alright. I cross the catwalk, make sure to raise it for my future self, enter that agonizingly quiet tunnel, and mentally prepare to fight the gator. Interestingly, Sherry's body is still in the pit even though we saw William step over to her. This must mean he infected her but then left her there instead of taking her away. God, this poor girl. Claire screams,
Sherry!
Which must have alerted the gator as it shoots out right afterward, looking like it's eating Claire just like it did Leon. My trusty grenade launcher combined with the gas leak causes a massive explosion, blowing the gator in half once again as I make my way to save a probably infected Sherry. With William yelling in the background, we witness a parasite leave Sherry's body as we grab her and the wolf medal. Sherry's stomach is immediately hurting, which isn't a good sign, but we head up the ladder and grab the eagle medal near the sewer manager's diary before approaching that cockroach-infested pipe from playing as Ada, though this time the bugs are thankfully missing. Otherwise, Sherry would have experienced 2 roach-filled pipes in one night, and that's just miserable. The sewers are now filled with zombies as we make our way to the tram car door with both medals, but considering Sherry's condition, I rush past everything and activate the tram. I know some bosses are coming up, so I'd rather save my grenade launcher ammo for them instead. Along the way, I find a spark shot weapon that takes up 2 inventory slots, so it must be good, right? Claire, Sherry, and I then activate that tram elevator to get to the lab, but Sherry passes out from her pain. We then hear Birkin land on top of us, and I head outside to take him down with my newfound weapon. I definitely overestimated the power of the spark shot, as I tank a few hits from Birkin, constantly assuming that if I fire just one last shot, he'll go down, but he kept on standing. Eventually, I'm forced to start dodging and firing more tactically, and I win the fight. We go back in the car to grab Sherry, and step out to find Birkin's body gone, which is only a little scary. Mirroring Leon and Ada, Claire carries Sherry into the nearby safe room and places her on the bed, providing a jacket to keep her warm. Sherry awakens, and the two have a much more wholesome and frankly realistic conversation than Leon and Ada did at this point. Sherry reveals what might be fairly obvious to many who have been paying attention, that her parents didn't cater to her much growing up due to their work. But now that Claire's here, Sherry doesn't feel so alone. The two share a touching moment, but there's a vaccine to find, so it's time to get moving.
Rest here for a bit. I'll be right back, as soon as I found the antidote for you.
The lab is missing its main fuse again, so I head to the west wing and use that anti-BOW gas sprinkler that doesn't seem to do anything, though I'm unfortunately missing a lighter yet again, so I can't get rid of that monster living in the vent. Mad at myself for forgetting this, I grab the fuse at the east wing and restore the lab's power, using my fire grenades to absolutely wreck the evil sentient plants that appear afterwards. From there, I head down the ladder alongside that master monster plant that I assume is in command of all the others, and enter the bottom portion of the laboratory. We fight off a set of lickers near the MO disk door and grab a map of the area for assistance. We start with the P4 lab area where all sorts of experiments went down to find and grab the red lab key and step out to Annette's gun in our face, accusing us of having killed William. I guess this is Claire's equivalent of Leon's meeting Annette on the bridge. I don't really know how she got down here considering I just took the tram, but that's beside the point. Miss Birkin then reveals that she has prepared a new sample of the G-Virus to continue her husband's legacy, and it says a lot that she hasn't asked about Sherry yet. Out of nowhere, we hear Birkin scream, and Annette runs off to find him, incredibly pleased that he's still alive. Entirely dismissing her joy, our wonderful William cuts down his wife and runs away as Claire approaches. That's right, be scared. With her husband beyond gone and her G-Virus sample smashed, Annette confides in us the recipe for an antidote so we can save her daughter. Codenamed Devil, the document details the G-Virus infection process before revealing that it is possible to stop the infection in its early stages by administering the G-vaccine antigen. We must start by setting an empty cartridge into what's called a VAM machine and turning it on, which will fill the cartridge with the base vaccine. From there, we need to go back to the P4 lab and set the base inside the vaccine synthesis machine, hit a button, and the machine will produce the vaccine in about 10 seconds. But before we head off to actually follow through on those steps, a funny moment. I was taking notes here and was distracted by my dog while playing this section, so I was away from the screen for about 10 minutes. The entire time the game was sitting on the note, and when I came back I spent some time rereading it, forgetting that Annette was sitting there moments from death. Obviously the game time pauses when notes are open, but it's hilarious to imagine Annette handing Claire this note and Claire just staring at it for 10 minutes, while Annette here is just struggling to stay alive and to get her final words out. Those words are when she finally mentions Sherry. She asks Claire to apologize to Sherry on her behalf for not being a better mother. Man, what's a worse death? Getting killed by the ceiling of your husband's underground lab collapsing on top of you, or by a mutated version of said husband cutting you down. Either way is pretty grim. Speaking of the ceiling of your husband's underground lab collapsing on top of you, the lab's self-destruct sequence goes off, and I assume we'll find out why in Leon's B scenario. We ditch Annette, head back to the security room, and see Leon on the monitor. We were just referencing you. Claire radios our resident officer and asks him to save Sherry while Claire needs to wrap up a few loose ends. She doesn't tell him where Sherry is though, which is kind of funny, but I'm sure he could figure it out. It's time to synthesize the vaccine, but I stopped near the terminal in the moth room on the way back upstairs, as I'm pretty sure this has repercussions in Leon's B scenario. I'm so happy to have a better understanding of the A and B scenarios now, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing their differences. Still forgetting a lighter, I test out my fire grenades on the vent-to-living plant in the West Wing, and it actually works. From there, I start the first step of the vaccine process and grab an MO disc in the East Wing, input Claire's fingerprint in the machine near the blast door, finish step 2 of the vaccine process in the P4 lab, use the disc to open a different blast door, and a countdown for the self-destruct sequence finally appears. About 45 seconds into that countdown, Birkin crashes through the ceiling in his latest mutated form. Unfortunately for him, I have a grenade launcher this time around. We beat his first phase with just a few grenades, and his mouth expands out of his chest to start the second one. This second phase is much less glitchy than Leon's was, which consisted of Birkin endlessly jumping, even landing on Leon's head multiple times, which made our end boss incredibly ineffective at killing us. Here, Birkin is much more brutal, honing in on Claire and getting in multiple hits at a time. He does so much damage to me that Claire is placed in the danger status, and we don't have any heals to fix that. As a result, after dodging and finally killing him, we're limping through the final moments of Scenario A, but fortunately there isn't long to go. That said, remember when I brought up emergent moments driven by gameplay earlier on? Same thing here. How many players blasted away Birkin and walked off with full health? Perfectly fine, whether due to them having a healing item or simply being good at the game. They get to see Claire coming off as the badass she is. Instead, since I am not great and I did not have any healing items, Claire limps away slowly from the fight. The scene is somber and I feel bad. I just witnessed the results of a family torn apart by a terrible virus, seeing the husband not only infect his child, but kill his wife, who was so dedicated to him. And now Claire is the one with the sole responsibility for this child, and we just made an antidote that we have to hope works so she doesn't turn into the same thing her dad did. When Claire's at full health, she runs at a much faster speed and with confidence. And this limping, emphasizing all the events that happened in the game, is a unique ending experience only shared by others who were just as bad as me. From here, however, things are the same for every Claire A scenario player. The same scene from Leon's scenario with the train blasting away and our main character arriving too late to get on happens, but with Claire and Leon's roles reversed. In fact, these scenes are so similar that they both include skipping over the hero actually getting on the train. But once Claire is on, things are anything but the same as before. Sherry's passed out on the bed, but everyone falls to the ground due to the lab explosion. Checking on Sherry, Leon remarks that she's unconscious, implying that she was conscious on the bed even though she was definitely passed out, but we need to save her regardless.
Claire, what's happening?
Not now. Come on, Sherry, wake up.
Ignoring Leon's ignorance, Claire injects Sherry with the vaccine, and she's immediately saved. No one mentions her parents, which is certainly for the better, and Leon's infamous line returns.
It's over.
No. I have to find my brother.
You're right. This is just the beginning.
Sherry and Claire share an additional moment where Claire reiterates that Sherry can have her jacket, and they share a loving hug. The end. Okay, so a couple of questions. Since Sherry and Claire were standing in the train in Leon's A scenario, am I safe to assume that Sherry isn't poisoned in Claire's B scenario? Now I'm really intrigued how things might play out. Will Claire and Ada ever meet? Does Leon interact with Sherry more in his next scenario? Also, does Mr. X exist in this version of the game? Is he a new character in RE2 Remake? Something sus here. I mentioned previously that I wasn't super hot on Leon's A campaign when I first beat it, only to come away with much more positive feelings after the analysis. Claire's A scenario is different. I received way more context this time around. Meeting Chief Irons instead of just reading about him, interacting with both Sherry and Annette to more directly see the effects that William's transformation has had on them, understanding why Birkin as a monster isn't just killing people, instead attempting to infect them and spread the virus even more, and just moving through the station with more of a purpose in mind. While Leon wasn't exactly wandering around aimlessly, his playthrough didn't share the urgency of trying to find a kid that's roaming around during a zombie apocalypse, and then developing a vaccine for said kid so she didn't turn into a monster that Claire's campaign did. That, alongside the developments on info I learned from Leon's scenario, made my second of 4 playthroughs much more enjoyable, and the grenade launcher. That certainly helped. Of course, I only appreciated this playthrough more while making this analysis, but I'm happy to have more positive feelings upon my initial completion this time around. As mentioned, Claire A to Leon B is supposedly the canon lore, so here's hoping that Mr. Kennedy engages me a little more next time, but otherwise, Capcom knew what was up while making this game. Concepts such as the fixed camera angle for added suspense, inventory management for intense puzzle solving, and meaningful backtracking to make the most of the level design are all on show here. That said, I'm still more of a fan of the mansion in Resident Evil 1, though I'm sure part of that bias is because I played Remake with its enhanced visuals. But man, remember when I said I thought this video would be on the shorter end? I didn't expect this much of a difference between Leon and Claire's scenarios. That's not a complaint, I just didn't predict that this long of a video would come from a second playthrough. I wonder if their B scenarios will give me this much to talk about. I guess we'll find out soon. Thanks everyone for watching as always, and be sure to leave your thoughts on my thoughts in the comments below. Did you agree with a lot of what I had to say? Are you mad about it? Does it contrast with your own experiences? I'd love to know. Let's have a dope conversation. Otherwise, I'll see y'all next time. Here are some fun comments on my previous Resident Evil video to end off the show. Fun fact, if you don't collect any items while trying to get to the police station, you will encounter infected Brad Vickers, the pilot who abandoned you in the first game. After killing him, he'll drop a special key that would allow you to get access to different costumes in the save room under the stairs. Good to know for my next playthroughs. Easy mode's differences are a lot less substantial than this video sometimes worries about. You start with a massive amount of extra ammo, have higher HP, and have extra first aid sprays in the item box. It's rookie mode where the easy mode perks get hilarious, but the differences are pretty tame for 2 Classic in particular. Also good to know that the differences between easy and normal aren't that significant. Did you know RE2 is the only title to feature cheat codes that you can use via the controller? This is the only title in the series to feature cheat codes in its entire library this far. I'm assuming that also means Resident Evil 8 since this comment was made after that game came out. That's crazy that Resident Evil 2 is the only game to enable cheat codes. I love that fact.